Hi, I'm Richard Sharp, and today we're going to be going over how to do a lunge. And so there's a lot of different variations of how to do lunges. Today, even though I've got the long PVC pipe, we're going to be doing a walking dumbbell or kettlebell lunge, and just pretending this is a dumbbell or kettlebell. For this exercise, it doesn't really make a difference that it's very long. The only thing you really want to make sure of is that you keep a neutral grip on it throughout. But just like the back squat, the lunge and all its variations are done in pretty much every sport for a lot of the same reasons as the back squat. It works out pretty much every single muscle that the back squat does, or different squat variations do, but it also adds the addition of like the inside of your hip muscle, the iliopsoas. So it does that as well as all your quads, your vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, vastus intermedius, and then your hamstrings, your semimembranosus, semitendinosus, bicep femoris, and then your gluteus maximus. So all these muscles are being worked as you do a lunge, and then it has the added benefit of being unilateral, and so that makes it a little bit more sport specific for a lot of sports, plus it helps it to emulate the motion of running a lot more, because in running you're always unilateral in that same lunging motion, just a lot faster. And so there's a lot of sport specificity to this, and there's a lot of just muscular advantage to doing some sort of lunge in all your workout plans. Now, the reason I wanted to do a dumbbell or kettlebell lunge is because it actually adding weight to just one side also engages a lot more of your core muscles, engages a lot more of your hip muscles to keep your body from dipping down like that. So it engages just a little bit more muscles. It really helps you get all the advantage of one workout as you can in that unilateral motion. And so to begin, you're just going to have a neutral grip, meaning almost like a handshake grip on your load. And you want to make sure your load is on, generally, it can be either way really depending on what you want to work, but just for the purpose of simplicity here, we're going to have our load in the arm opposite of the leg we're going to be working. Meaning if I'm stepping forward with my left leg, I'm going to have my load in my right hand. If I'm stepping forward with my right leg, I'm going to have my load in my left hand. And so you want to make sure you remember all the things that we say in pretty much every exercise, especially any kind of squats. You want to make sure you're always keeping your back straight. You want to make sure you're not really bending your back, you're not really moving your head anywhere. You want to keep everything straight, keep everything neutral and balanced. And what you're going to do is you're just going to take a fairly large step forward with whatever leg you're going with. Since my load's in my right hand, I'll be going with my left leg, right? And so I'm taking a step, and then we're squatting down. And so things to look for here is that your knee is following your toes, right? You don't want your knee kind of out, or definitely not in with that valgus. That increases risk of injury. But you want your knee to follow right in line with your toes, which should be going right in line with your body. So your chest, shoulders, hips, knee, toes, all should be facing one direction, along with your head to make sure you're not bending your neck any at all. And so it's a very simple exercise, but that doesn't make it necessarily easy. It's simple in the fact that everything is, like I said, going one direction. You want to keep everything straight. Now, a huge thing you want to make sure of when you're doing this is that you're keeping your foot flat. Just like in a squat, you don't want to lean and take any part of your foot off. You don't want to come in, take any side of this foot off. You want your foot flat the entire time. Like we said in the back squat, your force is always coming from the ground. So the more points of contact, the more surface area of contact you have with the ground, the more force you're going to get, and definitely the less likely injury is to happen. So keeping that foot flat, shoes like Vans make that a lot easier, is super important throughout this exercise. So another thing you want to look for is as your knee follows your toes, you want to make sure that your shin is relatively, you don't want it straight up, but you don't want it super far forward either. So what I like to look for is that my knee actually ends up pretty much right over my toes, maybe over the middle of my foot. But if I step too far out, I'm going to have a shin that's pretty much vertical. You don't really want that. It means you're stepping a little bit too far out. It's going to make it hard to come back up. It's going to put you at an awkward angle. So you definitely don't want your shin going backwards. You don't even really want it straight up. But then if I don't go far enough, my knee's going to end up over my toes. It's another thing you don't want. It just creates bad angles to get your muscles recruited the best, and it creates bad angles that can increase injury if done wrong, if done with too much of a load. So starting from your neutral position, everything straight, you want your back straight, stepping forward, knee following your toes, shin a little bit angled forward, my knees over my toes. You want to make sure, especially in the unilateral version of this, where I'm only holding a weight on one side, I'm just going to rest my knee on the ground. You don't want to do that in the exercise. But when you're only having a load on one arm, a big part of this is you want to make sure you're not dipping your hips any. You want to make sure your hips stay even. You want to make sure you're not dipping any, right? Because that's what that unilateral load is there for, is to engage muscles that keep you from dipping, right? You want to engage the muscles that keep you neutral, engage the muscles that keep you straight. So everything's going one direction, straight, and also you want to make sure your hips are level, you want to make sure your shoulders level, your head is straight, and so nothing's angled. You don't want to be here, you don't want to be like here, you don't want to be here. Everything's straight forward and everything's straight level, and those are the two planes you want to look at the most. And so as a coach, like I said, you want to look at those planes, everything going one direction this way and everything being flat with your hips and shoulders this way. And then as the athlete, you can use those same cues I mentioned a second ago, knee following your toes and knee over your toes. As long as you remember, for the most part, I'll switch so you can see it the other way. For the most part, your knee wants to be right with your toes in this exercise, both following it directionally and being over it vertically. And that's how you know you're in a good position. And when you're in that position, when you're at that right length, your body should be straight up and down. Your back should be straight, your shoulders, like I said, level, hips level, and everything should be perfectly straight. And then you're going to go right back up. And if you're doing it with a load on one side, it's easiest to separate this maybe into a set for each arm. So instead of walking, because when you're walking, what you'll do is you're going to go like this, and then if you go with the other leg, all of a sudden you have your load on the same leg, on the same side as your lead leg. And so what you want to do is pretty much do one set with one leg and go back straight and just do that again. It looks a little weird, but that keeps everything balanced. And then when you come back, you can do the other side. It's not always the best to do both sides at the same time because it can get confusing and you're doing a little bit different of a workout. So only doing one leg at a time is very helpful in this kind of exercise, and it's an important thing to keep in mind as you do it. And so that, in a nutshell, is your lunge.